sound of laughter echoed through the spacious house as Vine dragged her suitcase through the front door. Her mom and stepdad were busy chatting in the kitchen, leaving her to explore the unfamiliar surroundings. Your room is upstairs, second door on the right. Her mom called out, smiling brightly. Vine nodded and trudged up the stairs, her heart heavy with mixed emotions. Moving in with her new step family felt surreal. She had met Jungkook, her stepbrother, only a few times before. He was handsome, sure, but his cocky attitude made her roll her eyes. Reaching her room, she pushed the door open and sighed. It was cozy with light walls and big window overlooking the garden. She started unpacking when a knock startled her. Need any help? Jungkook leaned against the door frame, his signature smirk in place. One glanced at him, unimpressed. I'm good, thanks. Suit yourself, he shrugged, stepping inside anyway. Just thought I would check on the new kid, he said, putting his hands inside his jeans pockets. One, I'm not a kid, she shot back, narrowing her eyes. Could have fooled me, he teased, flopping onto her bed. Vanna felt ignoring him as she continued unpacking. Jungkook's presence was magnetic, but she wasn't about to let him know that. Jungkook, you're going to love it here, he said, his tone surprisingly soft. It's not as bad as it seems. Vine turned back to her suitcase, trying to ignore him. Don't you have better things to do? Not really, he said, folding his arms behind his head. Besides, it's my house too. I can hang out wherever I want. She hugged, refusing to let him get under her skin. Well, don't make yourself too comfortable, she said, more like warning him. Relax, I'm just messing with you, Jungkook said, his tone lighter now. You're going to love it here. It's not as bad as it seems, he said, repeating his earlier words again. Vine paused, glancing at him. His words were unexpected as, for a moment, she saw a flicker of sincerity in his eyes. Maybe there was more to Jungkook than his arrogant facade. Thanks, I guess, she muttered, turning back to her unpacking. Jungkook watched her for a moment, a small smile playing on his lips. You're interesting, man. I think we're going to have fun. Define fun, she said, raising an eyebrow. You'll see, he replied cryptically before getting up and heading for the door. Dinner is in an hour, don't get lost. As he disappeared down the hall, while let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jungkook was going to be a problem, she could feel it. Dinner was a lively affair. Van sat across from Jungkook, who seemed to revel in making her squirm. Every time their eyes met, he smirked as if he could read her thoughts. So when her stepdad began, how's the new room? Everything okay? It's great, thanks, she replied politely, avoiding Jungkook's gaze. She's settling in just fine, Jungkook interrupted, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Though I think she's a little shy. Van sought him a glare. I'm not shy. Jungkook could have fooled me, he said, mimicking her earlier words. Jungkook, his father warned, though there was amusement in his tone. Van's mom chuckled. You two will get along eventually. It's just a matter of time. Sure, Van muttered under her breath, stabbing a piece of broccoli with her fork. After dinner, Jungkook cornered her in the hallway. Van gasped by his sudden action. You know, he said, leaning casually against the wall, you're kind of fun to mess with. Van crossed her arms, and you're kind of annoying. True though, he said with a smile, but you will warm up to me. Everyone does. She rolled her eyes, keep dreaming. As she walked away, Jungkook watched her go, his smile fading slightly. She wasn't like the girls he usually dealt with. One was different, and for some reason that fascinated him. After dinner, Wan retreated to her room, hoping for some peace and quiet. She grabbed her sketch pad, flipping through pages of unfinished drawings. Art was her escape, a world she could control when everything else felt chaotic. Just as she began sketching, her door burst open. Ever heard of knocking? She snapped, looking up to see Jungkook leaning against the frame, holding a bowl of ice cream. Knocking is overrated, he said, casually stepping inside. Thought you might want dessert? She eyed him suspiciously. Why are you being so humble? There's no reason, he said, sitting on her bed uninvited. I'm just being a good stepbrother. Van, good stepbrothers knock, she replied, snatching the bowl from him. Yeah, right, he admitted with a smirk. What are you drawing? Van instinctively closed her sketch pad. Nothing. Come on, he gasped, leaning closer. I promise I won't laugh. Van, still no, she said, taking a bite of the ice cream. Jacob tilted his head, pretending to look hurt. You don't trust me? Van, not even a little, she said, but her lips twitched in a reluctant smile. He grinned successfully. There it is. I knew you had a sense of humor. Van rolled her eyes, but she couldn't deny that Jungkook had a charm that was hard to ignore. The next day, their parents announced a family outing to a nearby amusement park. Van wasn't thrilled at the idea, but Jungkook seemed oddly excited. I will win you a prize, he declared as they walked through the colorful gates. Van, don't bother, she said. I'm not into stuffed animals. Who said I was giving it to you? He teased, dodging the playful swat she aimed at his arm. Vine's mom, Jungkook and Vine, come fast. Yes, mom, he walked ahead while Vine just rolled her eyes. The day was filled with laughter and occasional bickering. Jungkook dragged Vine onto a roller coaster, ignoring her protest. This is a terrible idea, she muttered as the ride climbed higher. Relax, he said, grinning. What's the worst that could happen? Van glared at him but then put her face on his shoulder. Seeing her afraid, Jungkook held her hand tightly. Calm down. Van shot him a glare just as the ride plummeted. She screamed louder than she thought possible, clutching Jungkook's arm for dear life. When it was over, her legs wobbled as she stepped off. See, you survived, Jungkook said, holding her steady. Van barely, she grumbled, though her cheeks were flushed from adrenaline. Later, as they walked past a shooting game booth, Jungkook stopped. Watch and learn, he said confidently, taking the rifle. Van crossed her arms, skeptical. You're not as good as you think. Oh, yeah, of little faith, he said, firing three perfect shots in a row. The wizard handed him a large plush bunny, which he promptly shoved into Van's arm. For you, princess, he said with a mock bow. She stared at the bunny, then at him. Van, I thought you weren't giving me a prize. Changed my mind, he said with a wink. Van tried to hide her smile but failed. Thanks, I guess. You're welcome, he said, his tone softer. Cheers, everyone said as their family is now finally completed. Mr. John, finally, my dream to have a peaceful and loving family is completing, he said emotionally, and Vian's mom nodded with teary eyes. Vian just smiled, seeing her mom happy. This is all she wanted. Finally, 7 years later, after her dad's death, she is again witnessing her mom's genuine happiness. Meanwhile, Jung just stared at his father and stepmom blankly, as he was in a deep thought, but his thought got interrupted when Mr. John spoke. Let's enjoy our family dinner. That night, as they walked back to the car, one felt a strange warmth settle in her chest. Jungkook had a way of breaking down her walls, whether she liked it or not. You're not as annoying as I thought, she admitted quietly. Jungkook, and you're not as complex as I thought, he replied, nudging her shoulder playfully. They shared a laugh, and for a moment the tension between them disappeared. But as Jungkook looked at her, something shifted in his gaze. It wasn't his usual playful smirk or teasing tone. It was something softer, almost vulnerable. Van felt her heart skip a beat but quickly shook the feeling away. Let's not be too close, she said, walking ahead. Jungkook chuckled, watching her go. Too late for that, he murmured under his breath. Author POV. The following days passed in a blur of teasing exchanges and stolen glances. Van tried to keep her distance, but Jungkook's presence was impossible to ignore. He was always there, whether it was lounging on the couch, offering her snacks, or barging into her room uninvited. One evening, Van was curled up on the couch, engrossed in a movie. The rest of the family was out for dinner, leaving her and Jungkook alone. She heard him come into the room but didn't bother looking up. Jungkook, watching Titanic? He asked, plopping down beside her. It's classic, she said, hugging a pillow to her chest. Predictable, he teased, stealing the popcorn bowl from her lap. Hey, she protested, trying to grab it back. Jungkook held it out of reach, laughing. It's so easy to annoy you. She became more annoyed. Give it back, she said, longing for the bowl. In the struggle, she lost her balance and fell against him, her hands landing on his chest. For a moment, neither of them moved. Their laughter faded, replaced by a charged silence. Jungkook's gaze softened as he looked at her, their faces inches apart. You're kind of cute when you're mad, he murmured. Vi's cheeks flushed as she quickly pulled back. Don't assume anything, she said, her voice shakier than she intended. Too late, he said with a smirk, though his eyes lingered on her a little longer than usual. The next day, Vi decided to escape the house for some fresh air. She found a quiet park nearby and sat under a tree, sketchpad in hand. The silence was short lived when Jungkook appeared, hands stuffed in his pockets. Are you stalking me? She asked, not bothering to hide her annoyance. Relax, he said, sitting beside her. Your mom told me where you were. Thought you might want company. She sighed but didn't protest. Jungkook leaned over, peeking at her sketchpad. You're really good, he said, his tone sincere. Thanks, she muttered, caught off guard by the compliment. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sound of birds and rustling leaves filling the air. Why do you act like this? Wine asked, suddenly breaking the quiet. Jungkook, like what? Like you're always trying to get a reaction out of me. Jungkook hesitated, his playful demeanor flattering. Jungkook, maybe because I like seeing the real you, not the guarded version. Wine looked at him, surprised by his honesty. Wine, you don't even know me. Jungkook, then let me be, he said, his voice soft but steady. The intensity of his gaze made her heart race. She looked away, unsure of how to respond. That night, as Ryan lay in bed, her mind replayed the moment in the park. Jungkook wasn't just a flirt, there was something deeper behind his actions. But could she trust him? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on her door. Come in, she said, sitting up while fixing her hair. Jungkook entered holding two mugs of hot chocolate. Peace offering, he said, handing her one. She accepted it, her lips curving into a small smile. Thanks, she said while accepting the mug. He sat on the edge of her bed, sipping his drink. Jungkook, I'm not as bad as you think, you know. Van, I believe it when I say it, she said, but her tone lacked its usual bite. Jungkook chuckled, setting his mug down. You're stubborn, and you're annoying, she countered, though there was a hint of fondness in her voice. They sat in silence, the tension between them thick, but not uncomfortable. Jungkook reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was so gentle that it made her breath hitch. You are different, Vine, he said quietly. Vine, different? How? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You make me want to be better, he admitted, his gaze unwavering. One evening, their parents announced a family dinner at a fancy restaurant. Van dressed in a simple black dress, hoping to blend into the background. When Van came downstairs, Jungkook's eyes widened. "You're stunning today," he said, his voice teasing but laced with something deeper. "Thanks," Van said, avoiding his gaze. Just then Mr. and Mrs. John arrived. "Mr. John, Van dear, you're looking great." "Van, thanks, Dad." "Mrs. John, Jungkook, you're too looking amazing." "Thanks, Mom. Finally, someone noticed me," he said dramatically. Everyone smiled at his words. At the restaurant, the atmosphere was lively. Their parents chatted away, oblivious to the silent battle between Van and Jungkook. Things took a turn when a familiar figure walked in. Hana. Van froze as Hana made her way to their table, her smile radiant as she leaned down to kiss Jungkook on the cheek. Van's stomach crunched. Jungkook looked momentarily startled but quickly masked it with a smile. "Mr. John, Jungkook, who is she?" he asked confusingly. "Hana. Hello, uncle. I am Hana, Jungkook's girlfriend." Van's heart clenched and body became numb at her words. Jungkook glanced at Van time to time, which didn't go unnoticed by Hana. "Mr. John, Jungkook, you have a girlfriend too? You never told." "Jungkook, Dad, I actually." His words got interrupted by Van's mom. "He must be shy. It's okay, son, but make sure it won't affect your studies." "Hana, who is she, Jungkook?" she said, pointing at Van. "Hana, this is Van," he said, gesturing towards her, "my stepsister." Hana's eyes flicked to Van, her smile polite but distant. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise," Van murmured, forcing a smile. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Jungkook and Hana's interaction felt like a knife twisting in Van's chest. She excused herself early, claiming she wasn't feeling well, and left the restaurant. "Dad, I should go home and check on Van." "Mrs. John, don't worry, son, she must be tired." Back at home, Van sat on her bed, staring at the floor. She felt foolish for letting herself get caught up in Jungkook's job. A knock on her door made her jump. "Go away," she called out, but the door opened anyway. "Van," Jungkook said, stepping inside. She glared at him. "Van, what do you want?" "To explain," he said, closing the door behind him. "Van, there's nothing to explain," she snapped. "You have a girlfriend. End of story." "Jungkook, it's not like that," he insisted, running a hand through his hair. "Hana and I, we are complicated." "Complicated?" she repeated, her voice rising.